Are you tall enough to get the clock down by chance? No.
No
Okay.
way.
All right, thought I'd try.
I like that. Hey, how's it going? Ready for your big
I've got a little after 5. Let's go ahead and get started, everybody. All right, well, welcome to the Federal Way City Council meeting for the special meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for being here. We've got, this is a study session. We've got this is for the Sound Transit briefing for the operations and maintenance facility for what's referred to as the South OMF site. First, we'll have a staff introduction by Tony Doucette, our Sound Transit Liaison here at the city, and then we'll have our Sound Transit representatives. We'll talk. Council will have an opportunity to ask questions, and then we've got citizen comment. And then after that, we've got a meeting. We do need to be completed with our business by 6:30, and so because we've got another item that we have to address. With that, Tony?
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, and council members. My name is Tony Doucette. I'm the city's Sound Transit Liaison. And as you all know, there are 2 Link Light Rail extensions coming to the city of Federal Way, both the Federal Way Link extension and the Tacoma Dome Link extension, and then an operations and maintenance facility proposed to support them. The intent of tonight's study session is to present information at the start of the public comment period for the environmental scoping on the South Operations and Maintenance Facility alternatives as part of the Tacoma Dome Link Extension project. Joining us tonight, we have 4 members of the Sound Transit team working on the operations and maintenance facility planning effort. We have Curvie Hawkins, the project development director for the Tacoma Dome Link extension, Austin Neilson, government and community relations officer for the South Corridor, Paul Bennett, the project engineering director for the Tacoma Dome Link extension, and Sue Comas, transit development manager. At this point, I'll turn the podium over to Austin Neilson, who will give a brief project introduction, and then Curvie Hawkins will walk through the operations and maintenance facility alternatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. We appreciate the opportunity to present to the study session tonight. Again, my name is Austin Neilson. I'm with Sound Transit's government and community relations team, working with our communities here in the South Sound. Here today to present on the operations and maintenance facility south for our light rail system expansion. Before we dive into that and bring Curvie up, I just wanted to provide a little context. When we last presented to you a few months ago, as Tony mentioned, we were with the Tacoma Dome Link extension team. And the TDLE, as we refer to it, is our regional light rail extension, bringing light rail further to the South Sound, which will actually connect the Federal Way Transit Center, which is the terminus of the Federal Way Link extension, extending light rail 9.7 miles to the Tacoma Dome, with stations at South Federal Way in the vicinity of South 348th Street, 5 East Tacoma, and Tacoma. That project will also include 2 parking facilities, one in South Federal Way and one in Fife. The exact location of the alignment, station locations, and other amenities are actually still being developed in the years ahead. We hope to have a scoping period similar to what we'll talk to you tonight about the OMF South sometime later this year, and we will be sure to keep you posted on that. But to dive a little more into the OMF South and the scoping period, comment period, which has begun, I'd like to introduce Curvie Hawkins, who is our project director for both projects.
All right, good afternoon. So let's talk about the operations and maintenance facility for a few moments. We're going to talk a little bit about the background of the OMF, give you a better understanding of where we are today, and give you information on the sites that are currently in scoping. So an operations maintenance facility is part of our Tacoma Dome Link Extension project. It's described as an OMF South. As approved as part of the ST3 plan, we need to strategically locate an operations and maintenance facility that will keep our link light rail system functioning. It will be used to store and maintain vehicles for our system, our entire system. This facility, which is the purpose of our study session today, is one of 4 OMFs that will serve the entire system. We have an existing OMF that is currently located just south of downtown Seattle. We have another facility currently under construction in Bellevue. We need a new facility in the southern corridor and in the northern corridor. So where do we stand on this process? We recognize the exposure that this project has had, the media commentary about this project. So we want to update you on where we stand today. First, I just want to let you know we're very early in our planning process. No specific site has been identified. We started this process during early scoping, which was in 2018. It will take some time for us to select the ultimate site. We do not have decisions at this point. Our public process began in 2018, and it continues today with the start of our scoping period. So we officially kicked off our scoping period today. That scoping period will last through April 1st. During that time, we're going to expect to receive comments. We will inform the public, such as tonight, about our project, and we open public dialogue. So let's step back and talk about what an operations and maintenance facility is. So again, it's a location where vehicles are maintained every night as they are pulled out of service. This facility will operate on a 24/7 basis, 365 days a week, or a year. Basically, it's a place where vehicles are prepared for the next day service. Right now, we carry about 80,000 customers on our system each day. It's a 22-mile system. Our service runs till 1 o'clock at night. After our service ends, the vehicles come out of service. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the vehicles to get to our existing facility, but that's where they go. At that point, they're scrubbed, they're cleaned. When our system and light rail is free of vehicles, our crews then walk the track to make sure the tracks are free of debris. So an operations and maintenance facility supports those efforts. It's a required facility in order for our system to have a functioning light rail system. It's very important. We would not have light rail without an operations and maintenance facility. At our existing facility, just south of downtown Seattle, there are over 300 employees that work there. We expect similar numbers to the new facility that we need to identify in the South Corridor. The construction of the South Corridor will also provide over 100 construction jobs. So this is what an OMF looks like when you kind of look at the site layout. It involves about 18 storage tracks. This is what we assume as far as the operations and maintenance facility site will look like. 18 storage tracks. Each storage track will consist of 2 sets of 4-car trains. So basically 8 cars per track on 18 tracks. There will be a maintenance facility associated with this OMF. Within that maintenance facility will be 12 additional tracks. These are used to do the maintenance. We will need track yard leads. These are the tracks that go to and from this facility to the main line. We also need truck and auto access. There will be a maintenance away building as well. Again, this is the facility that supports the cleaning of the physical tracks. We will need employee and visitor parking as well. In all, this facility will be about 1,500 feet long and 930 feet wide. We would need over 30 acres. Each of the sites that we look at would typically be a little bit larger than, or you could say larger than 30 acres when you factor in the automobile access and the track configuration, the topography of the site as well. So a site could ultimately be 50 acres or more when you factor the number of parcels that would be needed. But at a minimum, it's 30 acres. What we will need for the OMF South. A couple of things we know. We need to store over 130 vehicles at a minimum. We need to accommodate for growth. So we factor in that it would be about 144 acres. We need well over 30 acres of relatively flat land. The site, again, could be over 50 acres. For operational efficiency, the site needs to be located in South King County. This facility will serve the entire light rail system as mentioned. So we need the facility to be located in an area where they can get in and out of service quickly. And it needs to be strategically located so the cars can get to and from the facility and off the tracks efficiently so that we can start our maintenance window. Again, that period of time between 1 and 5 o'clock to allow as much time as possible to do the maintenance on the vehicles, the cleaning of the vehicles, and the maintenance on the tracks. The shorter the window, the tougher it is to do that. So strategically locating this facility in an optimal location will allow that maintenance window to be as wide as possible to allow for efficient and effective cleaning of our vehicles and our track. So this is our evaluation process. Again, as I mentioned, we started this process during early scoping spring of 2018. Our goal in this evaluation process that you see on your screen here is to get us through scoping and ultimately to our Sound Transit Board of Directors to determine which sites that we will take into further environmental analysis study, our DEIS study effort this summer and later through the fall. It is not necessarily a process to select a site to be built. It's to determine which sites will go into a deeper evaluation process. When we started our process last spring, we asked our public stakeholders to help us identify some initial sites to look at. So on your screen, you see some of the suggested sites. These sites started in South King County all the way to the Tacoma Dome. There were about 24 sites that were identified. Once these sites were identified, we went through a pre-screening process. We used 3 high-level evaluation criteria. Those criteria are listed on this slide. 6 sites, as part of this process, were screened out. 2 additional sites were added because they were variations on out of those 24 sites. So in the end, after pre-screening, we ended up with 20 locations. Those 20 locations then went through an evaluation process. We developed evaluation criteria working with our interagency group. This is a technical working group that included jurisdictional staff from the City of Federal Way. We also provided this criteria to our elected leadership group. Our elected leadership group includes membership of Mayor Farrell. This slide illustrates some of the criteria used for our evaluation. The location will need to consider a wide range of factors, which include environmental impacts, which are the impacts to the natural and built environment and impacts to people. Also, physical and operational factors. We need this facility to fit our needs. So we need to make sure that it works efficiently and that it's affordable. Overall, the OMF needs to fit our Sound Transit 3 and long-range plans. So the results of our evaluation resulted in 6 sites. We conducted and completed our evaluation over this time. Information about the environmental, operational, and cost factors of the individual sites was collected and analyzed by a team of environmental planners, engineers, and other technical staff. Some of the sites did not perform well based on this evaluation criteria, such as operability and just environmental factors. Again, based on this evaluation, 6 sites remained. Some key notes about these 6 sites. There's no ideal site. I personally don't have a favorite. I think anyone can tell you that all of these sites have advantages and disadvantages when you look at the criteria. All the sites are in South King County. Again, this is based on operational efficiency as a key factor. So they're going to be located in Federal Way, Kent, or unincorporated King County. All of the information on our evaluation criteria, as well as our process, and the results of our technical evaluation is now available online. So we posted this information this afternoon as we started our scoping process, and we welcome you to review our process and our information and our technical reports. Our scoping period is open now, so we definitely want your comments. So these are the 6 sites, and I'm going to walk you through each of the 6 sites. But this is an overview of the locations that at this point are in scoping. So let's start on the north. We're going to start in Kent. This first facility is South 240th, State Route 99. So some of the advantages and disadvantages, and this is not the full evaluation of every site, by the way. These are just some snapshots. You're welcome again to go through the technical information to review all the detail. We just pulled out some of the key ideas and thoughts and concepts for your review and consideration at this point. Some of the advantages. It's adjacent to a light rail line that will be in operation by 2026. There are minimal impacts on the natural environment, and it has a lower preliminary estimate compared to other sites, $800 million. Some of the disadvantages. There are property impacts. I know a lot of you know about the Dick's Drive-In. This is the site. Also of noted here, there's a mobile home park within this site as well. So there's impacts. We recognize that. And also the light rail access. The green line that you see on this in the future maps is where the Federal Way Link Extension Line will operate or will be built. So this line goes directly over this site. We would have to come off of an elevated existing line when it's built, Federal Way Link Extension Line, down to the site. So there's a little bit of a spiraling track that's involved to getting it down to grade level, the vehicles down to grade level. And I will point out that as you look at the estimates, that these estimates are rounded. They are not the project's budget. These are for comparative basis. We're very early in understanding all the details of any of these sites. So these estimates are very preliminary. They're not final. We have not put them into what we call a baseline. They're not the costs that are ready to go out to bid for construction. We're still a few years away from that point in time. So we're very early in understanding the true cost of what this project could be. These are estimates. The second location I wanted to point out is Midway Landfill. So I know there's a lot of interest in this facility at this location. This one is one of 2 at the Midway Landfill we've done a comparison of. This location is on the western edge of the Midway Landfill. It's adjacent to the light rail track. It has limited impacts to private property. There's no identified wetlands or streams at this location. However, there's some notable disadvantages to this site. This site will need a complex concrete platform. Our goal here is not to disturb the Superfund site. This is a Superfund site. So building on this site will likely require the construction of a 33-acre, 3-foot concrete structural platform that will include about 120 piles drilled at a depth of about 100 feet. And we have to do this with a lot of caution because we cannot disturb the agreed to Superfund remedy that is at this site. There's hazardous materials. We can't cause exposure or release of those materials underneath. Additionally, the ground continues to settle. We cannot have a facility that 20 years down the road, 10 years down the road, creates tracks that are unbalanced or unsettled. So that means we have to go deeper to make sure that we reach settlement that is stable. That creates a little more of a complex situation of making sure we don't disturb the remedy of the Superfund site, because we have to go deeper to create a less settled structure. The regulatory requirements could impact the schedule as well. So this facility will need to be open in 2026. So we need to make sure that our process to get it open in 2026 is not impacted by additional regulatory efforts that we have to go through. This could create that. And then also, there's a higher preliminary estimate to this site as well. The next location, also as mentioned on the landfill. This facility is on the western side. Excuse me, the previous facility was on the eastern side. This one is on the western side. Apologies. This is near State Route 99. So something to think about here. Again, adjacent to the light rail track by 2026. No identified wetlands or streams. And again, similar to the I-5 comparison on the landfill. Complex concrete structure will be needed. Superfund site with ground that is still settling. The regulatory requirements associated with this could impact the schedule. One additional item by being closer to State Route 99 is that there are commercial and residential impacts. And then you see the estimated, the preliminary estimate at this site as well. A little more costlier than the other areas by estimate. The next site is 316th and Military Road. This is unincorporated King County, east of I-5, south of Military Road, and north of 316th Street. Just a couple of notes about this as far as the advantage. Across from the light rail tracks. So important, again, to be in operation by 2026 and connected to the Federal Way Link extension line. The preliminary estimate is lower compared to some of the other sites. Some of the disadvantages here, there are residential impacts in this area, less compatible with current zoning. So this area is zoned residential and community business. It does require crossing I-5. So we will come off of the Federal Way Link extension line, and we would have to cross I-5 two times with two tracks. And there's limited existing road access, so that just increases the cost and the construction effort that we have to make sure that there's automobile access to this site. So getting into Federal Way. This site is located in, south of 336th Street and west of I-5. Some of the advantages of this site. This light rail vehicle access and operating estimates for this site are better performing compared to some of the other sites. No impacts to parks, trails, or open land. A lower preliminary estimate compared to other sites as well. Some of the disadvantages. Potential property impacts, including Christian Faith Center. This facility will be located 1.1 miles from the end of the Federal Way link extension. So I talked how it was important that this facility be connected to an active line. When it is open in 2026, this facility needs to be connected to a line that is in operation. Tacoma link extension will not be open until 2030. So we would have to build a line that connects to Federal Way link extension 1.1 miles in advance of Tacoma link extension opening. And also, this is less compatible with current zoning. The last site is South 344th and I-5. Again, located in Federal Way. Some of the advantages here: light rail vehicle access is better performing. No impacts to parks, trails, or open space, and a lower preliminary estimate compared to other sites. Some of the disadvantages: potential impacts to industrial and residential properties. So we recognize that this is an important industrial area for the city of Federal Way. There's hazardous materials, as such as this being an industrial area. And then again, located a distance from the Federal Way link extension line, 1.3 miles. So those are the 6 sites. You were given a broad overview with my presentation today. Again, a lot more information is available for you to review, and we welcome your comments on those. We started our scoping period today. I will let you know that we were originally going to start our scoping period on March 1st. We recognize the importance of this project to provide comments as the community and yourselves became more aware and more involved in this project to learn more about it. So we did start it a little bit earlier. This does not shortchange the scoping process, it adds to it. We started 10 days earlier. That allows a wider window for the comment period for our scoping period. So we want your thoughts on the site alternatives, the purpose and need of the project as well. Review our purpose and need statement. Also think about things that we will eventually take into our DEIS effort later this year. What are the social, economic, environmental, and transportation issues that we should consider as we dig a little bit deeper into our environmental review? So these are the dates of our open house. You can go online at any time to review the information and provide comment. Starting today, it's available now. Or you can come see us in person and talk to us one-on-one. On March 12th, we'll be at the Federal Way Performing Arts Center from 6 to 8 p.m. And the way that's set up is it will be an open house process for the 2 hours that we're there. We will provide a formal presentation at 6:30. It will be information similar to what I provided here today. For those who aren't available or missed this presentation, very similar information, but it will be a formal presentation at 6:30. You do not have to be there at 6:30. You can show up at any time. We will have staff and technical experts there to answer questions for the duration of the 2 hours. Additionally, we will be at Highline College on March 20th from 6 to 8 as well. So this is information about how we've done our outreach. These are just some of the notifications that we've utilized. The mailers, email listservs are going to be distributed. We've released a press release today. Posters at key sites. We're doing print and online ads to advertise our scoping period. We're doing targeted door-to-door information, providing information. As I mentioned, our website is active at this point with this information. We'll do a social media blitz, and then we'll do we've conducted an official SEPA notice. So our scoping is part of a SEPA process. So these are our next steps. Again, we're in scoping at this point. Public comment period, February 19th through April 1st. All of this is gearing up to present this technical information and our public comments to our Board of Directors, Sound Transit Board of Directors, in May. Our Board of Directors will make a decision which sites to study in the EIS. Again, this is not a decision of where we're going to build. This is a decision of which sites we go into a deeper environmental analysis on. Approximately 2 years from now, we will conclude our environmental analysis effort. Our final EIS will be released, and our Sound Transit Board will then select the site to be built in 2021. This is our longer range timeline. So the "We Are Here" sign is in our planning effort, which started in 2018, that will go through 2021. Our design and construction effort will start in 2021, leading us to an opening date in 2026. Again, our process is to be open a few years before the Tacoma Dome Link Extension Project, which opens again in 2030. So that is my presentation. I'm going to let Austin close us out here, and we will welcome questions.
Thank you, Curvie, and thank you, Mayor, council members. A little additional information on our outreach. In addition to all of those methods that we will be and have continued to over the weeks ahead, we certainly welcome any input that council or staff or the community groups. We'd be certainly happy to meet with anyone to explain this project and answer their questions. Our staff at the start of the presentation shared a copy of the mailer that will be hitting mailboxes very soon. That will go out to more than 75,000 addresses along the project corridor. And to give you a sense of the geography, that will be within 1 mile of either side of the Federal Way Link extension route that was shown in the green line on the maps previously, and also 1 mile in either direction of State Route 99 and I-5 and Federal Way and the Tacoma Dome Link extension corridor. But we will be continuing to conduct robust public outreach and certainly welcome any feedback on how we can continue to do that and continue to do that well. I would like to introduce some other members of our team that are here this evening, and we can try to answer those technical questions that you may have. Sue Comas is our project manager for the Tacoma Dome Link Extension and Operations and Maintenance Facility South, and Paul Bennett is our project director for engineering for this project. And with that, we would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Councilmember Duclos, then Councilmember Johnson, then Councilmember Tran.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful. I was reading about the issues over in Kent, actually in the paper this morning. How many businesses here in Federal Way will be impacted negatively by the whole entire project?
By the entire, I didn't catch your last question.
By the entire project?
The entire which?
The project of bringing light rail through Federal Way.
The Tacoma Dome Link Extension project itself?
No, the whole thing. Do you know anything about the rest of it that's coming through?
I know I could give you information on the specific sites.
Well, okay, tell me about this site. How many businesses would be impacted at this site?
Okay, so depending on which one that you want to refer to, so 336 at I-5, for example, there's 5 properties, including the church at this facility here. And at 316th at Military Road, which is unincorporated King County, there are 45 properties, including 30 residential. And then at 344th, there are 35 properties in businesses at this location.
So are those people reimbursed for their loss?
And they will be. I would say that our process is that we have a formal process. We have to follow a federal process to relocate and keep a business as whole as possible if they're relocated. Yes.
Councilmember Duclos, did you have another question?
No, I won't bother.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Tran, and then Councilmember Asafadawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for the presentation, and Tony, your work with, connecting us with them and providing updates. I appreciate that. I know this is kind of more about process rather than getting in the weeds of the actual structure, but can you share some of your learnings from the past properties, like in Seattle, around kind of mitigating the challenges to the infrastructure within the cities? And it's particularly around traffic flow and how to kind of mitigate that, because I know that in our meeting that you kind of shared, some of the things that happened with traffic flow and what are some of those learnings? And also, I guess kind of piggybacking on Councilmember Duclos' question, would property owners and renters in the surrounding area be compensated?
Okay. So I'm going to turn this one over to our traffic engineer, who has a longer history on that question.
Thank you, Curvie.
I apologize, he's not our traffic engineer, he's our general engineer.
Yeah, so I get stuck for all the questions. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. So our experience in the current Federal Way project and as we're going to South Federal Way, we do have an impact on city infrastructure. There are cases where we may have to do construction in your road and we have an impact, and we try to go ahead and follow your city code. For example, if we're building our guideway along several parcels that are along your city street, then we may have to go ahead and make road improvements in accordance with your current code. So we work with your Public Works Department to figure out what are the improvements that we need to make consistent with your code. You also asked a question about impacts during construction. We also work with your city Public Works Department and Planning Department to figure out how do we minimize the impact on the roads. We are going to have an impact. There will be times where we need to close a road. So what we do, particularly when we're putting in our guideway structures, we can't put our superstructure over the road while there's live traffic. So we sit down with your Public Works Department and figure out what is the best way to do it. If we need 4 to 5 nights of closures, or 4 times we have to close the road, we work with them and say, is it better to do it 4 nights in a row that are between, say, 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., or is it better to close it on a weekend and just do it from 11 p.m. until Friday night until 4 p.m. Monday morning? We also work with them and say, when are there periods where we shouldn't be doing any construction? Is there a holiday period nearby your stores that you don't want any closures? Are there events that are occurring? We try to identify these items well during the EIS and try to make those stipulations of the EIS of how we will go ahead and work it. We do like to have some options. Does that answer your question? Oh, you also asked a question about compensation and relocation. In general, we do compensate any property owners, be it commercial or residential. We have a very deliberate process that we go through of evaluating exactly what we're going to need for the project. We then go through an appraisal process, and then we start meeting with the property owners and to come to an agreement, or if there's not an agreement, then there's another process we can go to. For businesses, there are also relocations, and as we start moving down further into this process, we'd like to take the opportunity to bring our real estate specialists into this meeting, and they can really get into the details and maybe ask some more specific questions. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I think the reason why I asked about the traffic in particular is because the two streets that you mentioned, 336 and 344 Third, those areas are really busy already with traffic. And so I just encourage you to listen to, the folks in that area. And also, in terms of the compensation, so you said there's a process, and that'll be made known public, right? That'll be a public. For the study.
Let me qualify.
Okay.
We wouldn't be making the compensation public. That would be kind of we're dealing with the property owners.
Okay.
I think at some point it might be public, but when it's recorded in the records. But during the negotiation, that would be with the individual property owners.
Sure. And then, so the study will be April 1st, did you say? Is that my understanding correct? April 1st is when the scoping ends, and so July, is that when the study will be public?
So what would be public?
So you said that April 1st is when the scoping process ends, right?
Right.
And then you said something about July 1st or somewhere in July is when the study will be public or something like that?
So the conclusion of this, we will present the results of the public scoping effort to our Sound Transit Board of Directors in May.
Oh, man, okay.
All right, Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, the team, for being here. Since this is going to be a 24/7 operation, so regardless of which site you are going to build, what are the potential impact on residential area and businesses? What about the noise, the pollution, once this facility up and running? And what are your plan to address those issues?
Well, I may let Paul chime in here, but I will say I know that as a council, you've been offered an opportunity to get a tour of the facility. I've been around the facility. I've been there at night, and I would let you know that the noise is pretty minimal. That is at that location. So we welcome you to participate in that. But it is a criteria that we evaluate. We do factor in the potential to impact sites around the facility. The construction noise is something that is probably something that we need to make surrounding areas aware of. So there will be noise during construction, but the ongoing operation is something that is not very substantially loud, but I may turn it over to Paul if you want to add anything additional.
Sure. We are offering you the opportunity to come to our operation maintenance facility. I think it's sometime in the next 2 weeks where it'll be during the day. But we would actually encourage you to come at night when it's really going to be working, when the maintenance comes in between the hours of 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., to get a sense of what the noise and what the light impacts are during the operation. We can say minimal, but unless you actually see it yourself, you won't have a good appreciation, so we encourage that. We have to meet federal regulations so that, anything over, I think it's over 65 decibels can't go off of the property, and we meet that. You also have the question of light. I think you just have to kind of see what kind of lighting is going on in that area. We don't have large floodlights going through the area, but it is lighted. We need to secure our site. Even when it's fenced, we want to make sure that people aren't coming in and vandalizing our vehicles, so we want to make sure there's sufficient light so security can see what's going on. I think you also asked a question about pollution. Remember, these are electric vehicles. So it's not as if a rail yard where the diesel engines are running all night long. Electric vehicles. We do maintenance. We do cleaning with typical cleaning solvents. But that's about where we have for the pollution. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Sifatasan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I do have several questions. One is to follow up on Member Johnson's question, you will be compensating owners, property owners and businesses. How about renters? How do they get compensated, or will they even get compensated?
So, Sue, could you help on this?
So yes, just to clarify, the compensation is for anyone who is directly affected or impacted. In other words, if we need to acquire the property, including if they are renting, and we need to acquire that property at one of the sites, for example, in the drawing here that you're seeing, they would also receive relocation assistance. And we do need to meet the Federal Relocation Assistance Act, and so that is what Sound Transit uses as a standard, and so we would ensure that renters get that relocation assistance, whether they are a business or a residential renter.
Okay, thank you. And you talked about the cost, like 750 million all the way to 1.4 million, right? I mean, 140. Does that include additional costs, like you said, one of them doesn't have a road? So would it also include that, or is that additional to what you suggested here as the lower or the higher amount?
Yes, so that was assumed in this estimate as well of additional road work.
Okay. And, and then the mailing, about 750,000 mailing that's going to go out?
That's approximately 75,000 addresses.
Addresses, so in Kent and Federal Way and Midway?
And farther down, it's the entire corridor. So we can we'll work with our outreach team and see if we can get a breakdown of Federal Way addresses, but 75,000 total addresses.
So those also include renters?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Thank you for meeting with us last Friday. So I have some questions about this South 344th site. A property there was recently redeveloped into Eleanor's Yogurt Company, and it cost millions of dollars to redevelop that. If that site were chosen by the board, do you compensate for the cost of redeveloping a site so recently?
There would be a fair market value established, and that's what Sound Transit would reimburse them.
So that doesn't sound like you would it sounds like they might not be compensated for the amount of money it took to retrofit the building for what they're using it for now.
Well, it's actually a complicated process, the establishment of the value of the compensation, so I don't want to misspeak here. And, we could certainly have our real estate folks get back to you, but this is actually a legal process that's legally determined what, just like if the city of Federal Way were to acquire a property for some use here, it's a similar process that any government needs to go through, and at the end of the day, if there is not an agreement, as Paul was mentioned, there's a negotiation that happens. If people don't agree, then it does go to a court for final adjudication in terms of the actual amount of money.
Okay. This site by Christian Faith Center, right across the street, there's some homes and some residences. If you were to choose that site and their properties weren't physically touched, but they're impacted by the construction and by the ongoing work that's done nightly, are they in any way compensated for perhaps loss of value of their property or inconvenience or any of those kind of things?
So as part of our DEIS and eventually our final FEIS, We will review any potential impacts to directly or indirectly. We will work to mitigate any of the identified impacts, and ultimately, we will need to be signed off that we have mitigated those impacts. So if there are surrounding noise impacts, we will identify those and work with those who feel that they could be impacted to try to mitigate that. I can't, at this stage, we're so early in the process, I can't guarantee you what that mitigation would be.
Okay. At the Midway landfill, if either one of those sites were chosen, which I'll just go out and say that that's where I would prefer it to be, because I don't want to lose our businesses here in Federal Way and impact our residences here by this. If the Midway landfill isn't a site that, so it has more issues than other sites because it's a landfill. Why is it in the final 6 then? If it has increased issues, it'll cost more to build there. Why did it make it to the final 6?
It was a very, I'll start by saying that it's a site that is a popular location because it looks like it's a acceptable location for a facility. So we continue to learn more about this location. I would say, yes, you do see a long list of disadvantages, but at the same time, we need to explore it in our environmental analysis effort, in my opinion. That's why it's one of the 6, to see, does it really have a fatal flaw? These are disadvantages. Are they fatal? Not necessarily, but there's some strong things that we have to get through to make it what we consider a viable site. But at this point, it's still one of the 6 because we think it's one of the ones that we need to explore in our EIS effort.
Okay, thank you. And I'll say again, I want our businesses to stay here in Federal Way. I don't want to lose them, so I would support the landfill site. Either one of the sites are at the landfill.
All right. Councilmember Stefanossin?
Yeah, one more question. And I do support what Deputy Mayor Honda is saying in terms of displacement of businesses and residents. You referred to the last 2 south of the Federal Way Transit Center. You've referred to them being outside of within the 1.1 or 1.3 miles from light rail tracks. But the tracks have not been identified yet, correct?
Correct.
So is 1.1, where does that figure or number come from?
The 1.1 miles, that's where the physical end of the Federal Way link extension will be built, which is near the Commons Mall. Just as we travel 1.1, for example, miles south of that point, this is where the site is located.
Okay, so we're not talking about the ST4. We're just right now talking where it stops at Federal Way Transit.
Yes.
And not beyond that. Okay.
So to get to the site, we would need to construct, before Tacoma Dome link extension construction starts, we would need to construct track to get to this facility that would extend, for example, Federal Way link extension to get to this site.
Okay, so is that cost estimate also in here somewhere?
That extension cost is not in there. It is the site itself. Does not include the cost of the extension.
So that would increase the cost of the site, once the site's identified, adding the extension.
It will, but we chose not to use that as a comparative basis because it would create an unfair advantage to those sites north of Federal Way Transit Center.
Okay. And earlier, when Councilmember Duclos asked for how many businesses and residences are being impacted, can you repeat those numbers for me, please?
Sure. So again, at 336, there are 5 properties, including the Christian Faith Center, And at 344th, there are 35 properties and businesses. This includes 10 residential properties, just over 10 residential properties.
So what's the total of all of those properties?
What is the total of those properties? So you have 40 properties.
Okay, were there any other questions? Councilmember Duclos, you got your microphone on. Do you have another question?
No.
All right. Any other questions, council? All right, let's hear from the public. All right, I've got 5 sheets, and again, we need to be, I think we've got enough time here to get through all of them. Brad Thorson, then Jasmine Donovan, Bob Klein, Peter Barbin, and Ken Broyles. Brad Thorson? Oh, there you are.
Good evening, council and the public. I'm Brad Thorson. I'm the developer of Garagetown Federal Way. We have a 4.22 acre site, which is in, if you put the slide back up on the board, of the furthest south site. We're in the southeast corner of that site. And based on the criteria that Sound Transit talked about today, I'm a little disappointed in their numbers. Our property, like I said, 4.22 acres. We have 4 concrete tilt-up buildings, 71,000 square feet. We have 67 storage condominiums, which have been sold to individual owners. And of that, we have 56 total owners. So some owners own multiple units. And the other thing about Garagetown is very unique is it's assessed at $12.5 million. It generates $144,000, almost $145,000 in annual tax revenue to the city of Federal Way. And these 56 individual owners have purchased these condominiums to store all kinds of things. And many of them can't store them anywhere else. They can't store them at their house. They can't store them in a lot of places because they're too large. Our garages are, the smallest one's 16 feet wide by 50 feet deep. The biggest one's 24 feet wide by 60 feet deep. So this place looks like a business park, but it's a storage facility and a community for these 57 owners. Also, we have a elevation difference from the northwest corner of the property. It's about 20 feet from the ground where our buildings are up to the top edge of our property. And with the constraints of rail traffic and how you would run rail tracks, I find it really strange that our site would be included in this assemblage of properties. And we're right next to the Illinois facility as well. And right to the east of us is a large wetland and protected area. We had to do a traffic study when we built this project. And 21st Street Avenue South is on the east side of our property. And if our traffic study showed we had a certain number of traffic count coming into our facility, we would have had to put in that road, and half of it goes through a wetland. So the fact that Federal Way chose to have our facility located there because we have low impact, very few trips in and out of there, and it provides a real valuable need for the community of Federal Way and for all of King County. So Garagetown is probably the only facility of its kind in all of King County. And it would be pretty disappointing if that piece had to go away. So my proposal to Sound Transit is to take a look at that carefully and see if they can kind of re-massage that assembly of properties to give them things that are more in line of what they're looking for, which is flat land, no hills, and a facility that might work better for them. So thank you for your time, and council, I think you should be really concerned about 57 owners. They said there's 10 residential properties and 35 properties, and just our 57 alone is quite a bit. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Jasmine Donovan. Then Bob Klein.
Hi. I want to thank the Federal Way City Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. I don't have a business in Federal Way, and I don't live in Federal Way, but my family's business opened our 7th location and our first location south of Seattle in the city of Kent, and is one of the sites being looked at here for the OMF South. I'd like to start by reading something from Sound Transit's website. Building light rail isn't about moving people from place to place. When Sound Transit prioritizes equitable transit-oriented development, it puts the building blocks in place for more people to live in sustainable, exciting, walkable neighborhoods with direct access to local businesses and community life. We plan to be one of those local businesses when we chose our site in Kent on Pacific Highway South near the coming soon new light rail station. We are here tonight because Sound Transit is proposing to do the opposite of its mission. I'd like to read more from a Sound Transit Board resolution from the spring of 2018. Equitable transit communities are mixed-use, transit-served neighborhoods that provide greater social and economic opportunity for current and future residents. We couldn't agree more. It goes on to say these communities promote local community and economic development by providing housing, commercial and retail spaces, community services, and other amenities integrated into safe, walkable neighborhoods. Again, we couldn't agree more. And yet, 4 of the 5 unique locations proposed for the 30-acre operation and maintenance facility south are in direct conflict with their mission. This is especially baffling when there is land owned by Seattle Public Utilities available to Sound Transit and in the perfect location. The Midway Landfill is the obvious choice. It takes otherwise blighted property and transforms it into a much-needed support system for the South Sound Light Rail network. By choosing that site, Sound Transit could contribute to the community and create local jobs, not destroy them. Sound Transit could invest in the communities it serves, not tear down the investments of those communities. The cities of the South Sound must help Sound Transit properly weigh all of the costs of destroying, thriving, and improving communities around the new light rail stations. Allowing a massive night shift industrial facility to be built on the Midway Shopping Center or other proposed sites in Federal Way that are not suited for late-night industrial facility ruins the vision of communities that are great places to live, work, and play with affordable housing and jobs. We ask you to follow the example set by the City of Kent. With your voices, you can make it clear to Sound Transit that the OMF South is more than welcome when it is built in the right location. Let's all work together to help Sound Transit succeed and find that right location.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore, did you have a quick question?
Yeah, Jasmine, sorry. Just to be really clear and clear, the business you're referring to is Dick's Burger?
Yes, my family's business is Dick's Drive-Ins.
Okay, I just wanted to put that on record. And if I recall, there was when you guys were discussing that as a location,
yes,
did you guys early on reach out to Sound Transit to talk about, is this going to be an impact? Are we going to be impacted by any development, future developments? Did that ever occur?
Yes, we had extensive conversations with Sound Transit because they're going to be running a guide rail along the back of the east part of our surplus property, and this concept never came up in any of those conversations.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Bob Klein. And then Peter Bourbon.
Hi, my name is Bob Klein. I'm with a company called Elenos Yogurt. We started our journey down here to Federal Way in, I believe, mid-2016. Took us about a year to find a site that was suitable for our business. We make Greek yogurt. Takes a lot of work, and it takes a specific kind of building in order to make it. So we found the Bodden building that we're in that's being considered for the site. And what made the Bodden building good for us was it was a standalone into the cul-de-sac, circular driveway. It fit all our needs, and so what we decided to do was invest millions of dollars into not only the infrastructure, but into equipment and to, sorry for lost words, I wasn't prepared to speak, and for our future. So we signed a 15-year lease with the people that own the building, and our intentions were to invest millions more this year and over the following years. We hire 150 employees that show up at the building. We have our own parking lot, which is convenient for them. We cannot locate in a industrial site with other manufacturing. We're a food product, so we like to be by ourselves. Let's see, what else did I write down here? If Sound Transit chose to our site as the for what they wanted to do, it would be extremely difficult for us to remain doing business here in Federal Way. They're just the structures aren't here for a company like ours. So we would probably have to relocate out of the city, and we didn't choose to do that. I personally have moved here myself, and I like it here. So anyway, if I had to choose a site, I'd probably take that landfill. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Barbin, and then Kim Broyles.
Good evening, Council, and Mr. Hawkins, thanks for your presentation. I appreciate that very much. Again, my name is Peter Barbin. I'm a captain with Alaska Airlines. I've been living in the Seattle area for 23 years. Lived in Federal Way for about a decade until a little life circumstance changed, and I downsized. Kids left home, so I moved into a little King County urban density development called Burien Town Square. Bought a new condo, 1 bedroom, 8 minutes to work, 3.5 miles. So that satisfies my work commute drastically, but I had a problem. I had a lifetime collection of family keepsakes, old antique motorcycles and such. My son lives in Auburn. My family, mom and dad live in Lacey, so Garage Town Federal Way was a solution. I met Brad Thorson about 10 years ago, and that's where I've parked all but my bedroom, if you will, and I spend most of my time at that hobby site in Federal Way. It's quite a solution. Again, I'm one of 56 owners, and I've living small in a 1-bedroom condo, I've been able to put a lot of money aside, and just in 2 units of the 67 we have, I got about $350,000 invested in permanent upgrades, mezzanines. It's truly a clubhouse, my home away from home. It's not much you can do with a 1-bedroom condominium without a garage or a hobby space. So it's truly a community of retirees, hobbyists, folks that have motor homes. They retire, they have nowhere to park their camper, what have you. So again, we're not just an industrial site of 4.22 acres. In that 4.22 acres, we have 56 separate owners, and these are not just holes. These are reinforced concrete tilt-up, reinforced floors. I've done electrical upgrades. It's a home away from home. So if this solution were to disappear, I would probably be, moving and retiring and getting out of state. There's nowhere else to build easy freeway access, high, dry ground. I got the Time Out Ale House. All my friends are in the South Sound and Federal Way, so this is truly our community. And to see a 10-year young, multi-million-dollar, $12 million facility just plowed to the ground or buried doesn't seem very cost-effective. And, my vote is to look at that non-tax parcel. I know it's going to take some extra fancy concrete to make that landfill happen, but if that's going to be a site for 100 years of service, I think the taxes I pay with $4,000 a year just for my 2 little units, times 100 years of service, that'll certainly help mitigate the cost differential for the landfill development. Thank you, Curvie. Thank you, Council.
All right, thanks, Peter. Ken Broyles, and then Patty Hay.
Thank you, Council, for inviting us here. I'm a Garage Town owner. I purchased it over 8 years ago. It was part of my retirement plan because we like where we live in our community, and I've done extensive upgrades, got permits to make the garage better. My grandsons come over there. They hang out with me. It's just a great place to keep them out of trouble and train them. And I think the landfill is where it needs to be built. And it's going to disturb a lot of people there at Garage Town. I mean, if the city council or someone could come out there and check it out sometime, I'd be more than welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Patty Hay.
Yes, my name's Patty Haig. I'm an owner of a 55,000 square foot building that my dad built decades ago before Federal Way was even a city, and that's where Elenos is. And all I wanted to say is we want to stay in Federal Way. We want to continue to be an important part of the community, and I encourage Sound Transit also to seriously look at the landfill. Seems like the perfect location, the perfect everything, and I want to urge Sound Transit to not take businesses away and also hundreds of jobs away. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Russ Hibbard. And then Mia Franklin.
My name's Russ Hibbard, and I'm the owner and president of Northwest Equipment Sales on 341st Place. I've lived in Federal Way my whole life and raised 4 of my children in this district. I've coached basketball, soccer, and baseball for 17 years through all the sports and supported and also sponsored many of the teams that I coached. I also support the Federal Way Police Department as well as the Federal Way Public Schools. I moved my business from Kent to Federal Way in 2003 and purchased the building that I'm in now. I currently employ 10 families, not a lot, but it is a lot to me, and they also live in the Federal Way, and some are teachers, and my employees all shop with all the local stores and all the other services in Federal Way. Our business is kind of a different business. We're a rental yard, so we serve the Federal Way businesses and the surrounding communities with various rental and sales services. We currently service the Federal Way Public Schools and the new Performing Arts Center, as well as the special events at the ball fields and Celebration Park. We currently are the only rental yard left in Federal Way. All the other rental yards have moved out. I take pride in being a good citizen of Federal Way, and if we're forced to move, it would have a devastating effect on my business, my employees, and my family. Our business is unique in that we need a shop, storage yard, and an office that needs to be quick to the freeway. And that's not easy to find. If forced to move, it would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue per year. Not only would it impact me personally and my employees, it would also impact the city of Federal Way in lost revenue from taxes, both sales tax, property taxes, and support of the local businesses. I hope and pray that big business doesn't destroy a small business. My feeling is that Midway should be your site. And you talk about it's already owned, and you talk about drilling. Why isn't some of the drilling done prior to see what the soil is there? I mean, do a little pre-drilling and check it out. That's what I would do. So my vote's for Midway.
All right, thank you. Mia Franklin.
Okay, good evening, everybody in council. So good to see you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm here because of the Sound Transit moving in right behind my property, which would tear up a lot of these businesses. These people in here, they're talking. Their businesses is right behind my home. I've been on the same block for 10 years. I have 3 homes over there, me, my son, my mother. I have a daughter with special needs. we're very much rooted into this property and this area, and it's so good for us because of location and convenience, because of the disability that my daughter has. It's also a very nice, wonderful block, one block of homes, and these businesses, they've been so dedicated and faithful, and everybody who's over there, we all know we all get along so well. I'm so concerned about Sound Transit coming in there. I'm concerned about the noise level. I'm concerned about the safety, the element that it brings in, and the amount of people that'll be positioned right there behind my home. There's nothing but a gate, a wire gate that separates my homes, my two homes that's over there from these businesses behind me, but there's like no high traffic of people. They're just businesses operating back there. And I'm also concerned about my property value. You know, what is this going to do to my property value? So when you have alternative areas that you can build on, as opposed to coming in and tearing down businesses and possibly even homes, I always like to think you would consider the empty land as opposed to tearing up business and family. So I'm hoping that the council takes in consideration that you do work for the people. We here are the people, and we are asking you to ask them to consider moving in an area that does not tear up families and businesses. So we're looking, you know, for this to work for the people and not for the dollars and the corporations. I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. That's the last pink sheet I have, so at this stage, we had an opportunity. Oh, Councilmember Moore, did you have your microphone on?
I'm just looking for council discussion.
Oh, we already had it.
Oh.
We had council discussion and questions, so therefore, you know, the most important thing is we wanted to make sure that the community got an idea, a very full idea of what is being proposed, and had an opportunity for the public to discuss this as well. There is an ongoing process. We've got the Sound Transit folks that are here that can ask questions. We have our staff that can ask questions as well. We do have another matter on our agenda. We have an executive session for collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 4230-1404B. We will be in recess for approximately 30 minutes to accomplish that.
Just one
Councilmember
thing.
Duclos?
I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and expressing your concerns. And I'm sure, I think everybody up here shares your concerns about what's going on. And I think the landfill, in my mind, is a perfect solution. It doesn't disturb anybody, and it will do something to improve a landfill. So I hope Sound Transit will look at that much more seriously. Thank you.
I will echo those comments. Actually, I would say that we very much appreciate everybody being here. This is actually what we do. We work for you. I think that's what Mia said, and she hit the nail on the head. And we work for you. We want to do everything we can to be your voices, and we appreciate the Sound Transit folks coming out. We appreciate the public that came out. I think it was mentioned earlier, I'm the co-chair of the Tacoma Dome Link Extension elected officials group. We have a public meeting this Friday over down on the Port of Seattle at the Fabulodge Center. That's open to the public if you'd like to come. I believe that starts at 9 and goes to 11. And there's a good discussion, and there's a lot of staff, a lot of representatives from the elected leaders for that whole Tacoma Dome Link extension. This process will be ongoing. But once again, thank you, Councilmember Duclos, for bringing that up. We very much appreciate it. All right, we are in recess for executive session for the next 30 minutes. Thank you.